our graduation speaker, who is Rose Gaudemuller. Rose is the Stephen C. Haase Lecturer at FSI and its Center for International Security and Cooperation, CSAC. I have to confess, I've actually known Rose since we were little tadpoles together. We were both at the RAND Corporation together back in the 1980s.
Neanderthal times.
Yeah. So I've known Rose a long time, but she's had an incredibly distinguished career since then. Before joining FSI, she was the Deputy Secretary General of NATO from 2016 to 19. She helped drive forward NATO's adaptation to new security challenges in Europe and in the fight against terrorism. Prior to that, she served 5 years as Undersecretary for Arms Control and International Security in the State Department, and she was also associated with the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace, IISS, RAND, many other organizations. And so she's been particularly helpful to our students who are interested in security issues. Obviously, NATO has become an important issue since the Russian invasion of Ukraine, but she's devoted a great deal of personal time and attention to her teaching, and we really appreciate that. So, Rose, with that, welcome, and please.
Thank you. I can personally attest that those policy projects were so interesting. I was really impressed. I managed to sit in on most of them, and I thought, wow, they range the world over, and they really are formulated to be useful to policymakers. So I congratulate you all on the hard work you did, but also the program itself for coming up with this concept, which I truly think is a cool one. So I wanted to say to begin with that I'm so honored for this opportunity to speak to the 2023 graduates of the Ford Dorsey Masters in International Policy at the Freeman Spogli Institute of Stanford University. I wanted to thank my friend, the director, Dr. Frank Fukuyama, for giving me this honor. It truly is one, and it's wonderful to be here with Mike and Shanira as well, because we work so closely together, not only here at Stanford, but with Mike, I was honored to be working with him in Washington and during his time in Moscow as well. But most of all, I'm happy to be standing before you, the parents, friends, and relatives of these students, and say to you what a magnificent bunch they are. They are full of spit and vinegar, as my Ohio relations would say, and I have to agree with them. These young people take risks, they push themselves, they speak up, they're never afraid of new ideas and new challenges. In short, they are ready for whatever joyride the 21st century is going to take them on. It has been a privilege for me to know them, and thank you for what you've done to bring them up to this point. On many graduation podiums this spring across our great country, ChatGPT, generative artificial intelligence, is making an appearance. I hope not writing the speeches. It certainly didn't write my speech, but I think figuring in the discussion. I will comment briefly, too, recollecting the words of American author William Faulkner when he made his 1950 Nobel Acceptance Prize speech. I believe that man will not merely endure, he will prevail because he has a soul, a spirit capable of compassion and sacrifice and endurance. Whether you embrace soul in a religious sense or in a cultural way, I'm thinking about soul music. The idea is that we have a unique human capacity to feel and to do. In a way, we are talking nowadays about our long-term endurance in the face of an onslaught of new technologies that threaten or appear to threaten to sap our human agency, to remove the essence of the creative force that leads to new beauty in music, art, theater, film, dance, writing, to halt the human insight and ingenuity that lead to new discoveries in science and innovation in technology, and perhaps to muffle the comfort and peace that come from stable and secure family relationships, also among friends and lovers, among colleagues in the workplace, even perhaps in some ways disturbing everyday kindness among strangers. As I've talked with my own Stanford students this spring quarter, including some of you in MIP, about the advent of generative AI and how it will affect your lives, I've been heartened by the determination you have shown, every one of you, to sustain your individual creativity and think of ChatGPT and more advanced tools as they arrive on the scene as just that, as tools. You are determined to endure as human beings with agency to create, to innovate, to love, and to be loved. I don't know if this message has any special importance, coming as it does from the heart of Silicon Valley, where so many of these trends developed in the first place, but I can tell you that it does have a special meaning for me as your teacher. The first generation to have generative AI thrust upon you is ready to look upon it as a tool, but not to allow it to usurp your essential humanity. Now, any good commencement speech must contain some advice, right? I cannot resist. I used to quote Calvin Coolidge and his devotion to persistence. Nothing in this world can take the place of persistence, he said. Education will not. The world is full of educated derelicts. Well, you won't find any educated derelicts among this group. But then I got to thinking anyway. One of the great things about America is our willingness to admit it when things are going wrong, to abandon failure, and to move on. Certainly that has been the second law of Silicon Valley after move fast and break things. If you fail, get over it. Try again. So I'm going to leave Calvin Coolidge behind this year. But I won't leave judicious risk-taking behind. That is the essence of a successful life. I liked the May 28 interview in the Financial Times of Jeremy Fleming, the head of GCHQ in London, that storied home of James Bond. Fleming talked about his career as a series of sliding doors. When they opened, something unexpected was on the other side, and he stepped through. I think he pulled the image from the 1998 film with Gwyneth Paltrow, which doesn't exactly match his life, but I got it. When the risks presented themselves, he embraced them. I have to say, I took a risk to become Deputy Secretary General of NATO in 2016. I'd made my career working on nuclear weapons policy, and suddenly I was thrown into an organization largely devoted to conventional defense, with, at the time, 28 Allied members, many of whom I knew nothing about. I will note, for example, my enjoyment having a student from Albania. When I arrived at NATO for the first time in 2016, I knew very little about Albania. All I'm saying is, when something comes along that takes you out of your comfort zone, take a good hard look at it. I did. I was on a steep learning curve in those early years, and I'm very glad I accepted that job at NATO. At age 65, it forced me to learn and grow. My second piece of advice comes from Ambassador Linton Brooks. He was the chief negotiator of the first Strategic Arms Reduction Treaty in the 1990-1991 period, when I worked for him as a very young and very green member of his delegation in Geneva. Linton once told me when we were pulling all-nighters during the negotiations that a shower is worth 4 hours of sleep. You probably know this yourselves, having just come through exam time. But just don't take the advice of a friend of mine, a real joker, who said, take 2 showers, one after the other, equaling 8 hours, and then you won't have to sleep at all. So I don't advise that. My third piece of advice comes from Dr. Joseph Coates, who was my professor in graduate school. I put up my hand in class one night, and when he called on me, I started out by saying, I don't really know very much about this, but Joe stopped me right there and said, never apologize. He said, your thoughts and insights are just as good as anybody else's. Just get them out there. Well, I don't know about you ladies, but for me this was a special problem in my 20s. It took me a while to rid myself of the habit of apologizing, but it's been worth it. Diving in without apology gives you the edge in gathering everyone's attention. Never apologize for your ideas. That, of course, goes for you guys, too. For my last piece of advice, I will return to the topic with which I began. It's especially for you, again, the first generation to have generative AI thrust upon you. Remember always that it is the joy of creation that makes us special. The surge of inspiration that comes when we're on a roll, making a tune or a poem or a dance, or even writing a capstone project. It is, in fact, what makes us essentially human. So although it seems easier some days, no doubt, just to put the question into the chat, start thinking. It is indeed what makes us human. I will close with my great thanks and appreciation for everything that you have done for me in the past 2 years. I have learned so much from you, and I just feel like I am honored to know you as well. I think you have what it takes to make your way well in life, so good luck and Godspeed. Thank you very much.